that's something that I hate to see happen to people. So if you want to make real estate a passive investment, I always say owning real estate is not passive, but investing in real estate is.
Welcome to Multifamily Insights. I'm your host, John Casman, and I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode. Listen, if you're enjoying this show and getting good feedback and information to help you as a real estate investor, make sure you give us some feedback and leave us a rating and review. If you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. Now, we got a good show today. We're going to be talking to Justin Moy. Now, Justin Moy has been in real estate his entire professional career. He started out selling single-family homes in the third most competitive market in the country, and he was able to become a top producer within his second year at the largest firm in the area. Through that experience, he realized there was a difference between being rich and being wealthy, and he started to look for ways to turn his high transactional income into long-term wealth through multifamily investments. Let's welcome to the show, Justin Moy.
John, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here, excited to be on this side of the table.
Absolutely, Justin. It's great to talk to you. I went over your bio at a very high level. Why don't you take 2 minutes and fill in some of those gaps?
Yeah, so man, really, you hit a lot of the big key points there. Before I sold real estate, I actually got my first office job was in a commercial real estate office. I was 17 years old, had an internship at a commercial firm there, and I sat across the hall from who was like hands down the top producer in the office. I mean, he knew everybody. What he said went. If he said he wanted a certain brand of coffee in the break room, the next morning it was there. I mean, it was just crazy, and I never had seen that type of energy before. And so as a young kid looking to make a splash in the world, that kind of caught fire on me. And so I decided I was going to follow that step and get my broker's license. I ended up selling single family homes because in the Bay Area, you don't have to sell commercial properties to hit, multi-million dollar transactions. And through that, I just really, really noticed the difference between how happy my investor clients were versus how really happy I was, even though I was making really great money. We were selling this home, and the guy I've sold a couple homes for him, and every time I called him, he was somewhere else in the world. He was on a boat, he was in Japan, he was in the Philippines, I mean, just traveling around doing everything he wanted. And I looked at my life and I said, man, I couldn't do that if I wanted to. I couldn't leave and go to Japan for a month. I wouldn't be able to even leave my neighborhood because if you do, you have to kind of start all over as a residential agent. So I decided that those walls kind of felt like they were closing in on me. I also felt that entrepreneurial creep coming up on me, where I was working extremely long hours. I was sacrificing my physical health, my personal relationships, my mental health for these big commission checks, and it was great while it lasted. But I knew I couldn't keep that up for long. So I looked for ways that I could build more wealth, own instead of transact, and through the process, through syndications, look to bring other people along this journey with me.
I love that, man. You talked about getting into real estate at a young age as an intern, man. Listen, I know a lot of people might be envious because, most people do something else and then find kind of real estate and commercial real estate. But you got to
Yeah.
start off as an intern in this real estate space at a brokerage, watching that top producer, realizing this is a great way to go. You become a broker yourself, focusing on single family homes in the Bay Area, making good money, but realizing that you were transaction based. So you couldn't really leave and travel and do the things that you really wanted to do. So eventually you decided to make that transition. Talk to us more about that because, apartment syndication is something we obviously talk a lot about on this show. But how did you make that transition given that you were a broker?
Yeah. So, it's something that you would think would help you a lot more in the transition, going from single family brokerage to multifamily ownership. And it helps a little bit, right? But I think it helps to the same extent that anybody who comes from a different background likely has some skills that are going to help them in the commercial real estate space. When I was making the switch, I was actually surprised at how long the learning curve was for me. Um, Concepts were just completely different. The way that businesses are structured is completely different. You're setting up LLCs and the legal structures are completely different. You're not just throwing up we had a template sale agreement when I was a broker. It's not like that on the side. Every transaction is so different. So it was a bit of a learning curve, and you obviously have a little bit of an advantage if you come from real estate as a background, but it's probably not as the advantage as you think it is. Like, oh, I'm just going to get it right away. there's still that learning curve in there if you're coming from, especially the residential space, and things are like, it's night and day difference. And it's not better or worse. It's just completely different. You have to learn entirely new business models, even the way that people structure their teams. Multifamily and commercial is a huge team sport. In the residential space, it's a team sport, but it's not uncommon to see individual agents, individual owners, individual investors. In the multifamily space or larger commercial, that's more the anomaly to have an individual operator. You see these bigger teams, these big conglomerates, people with staff running these investments. So that was a big change for me too, and it was welcomed. I love being part of this bigger game, and I love working on teams. I'm more of a team guy anyways, so it really fit me a lot better. But yeah, there's some few key differences that surprised me coming from the single family space that I guess I wasn't 100% ready for right when I made the switch.
Tell me about that first deal, right? So you go from being the broker to kind of syndicating
Yeah.
and being on the active side. What is that first deal like?
Yeah, so that first deal is 40 units, which is pretty cool. And to that date, I was like, oh my God, this is, I'm 10xing what the fourplex investor, is doing or looking at. And that's what I was looking at before. So 40 units was the first deal, and heavy value add deals. It was essentially vacant. I think it had 4 or 5 tenants living in them, but I don't think any of them were paying rent. They didn't even have leases. The leases that they signed, actually, if you read the leases when we were doing our due diligence, were actually still the templates. It would say, tenant name and address in big bold letters. They didn't replace them. So it was an owner that really had just kind of thrown their hands up on the property. I don't exactly know the full story, but a lot of negligence there. And so essentially we're coming in and we're buying really an empty building. Now, it was really exciting because, again, going back to what I said before, it's a team sport on this side of the table. So could I buy a 40 unit empty apartment building that needs, probably $700,000 of CapEx in it by myself? No way. I mean, that would just be way risky for me. I didn't live in the area. I didn't know any teams there. I didn't have any construction or general contracting experience. But in the multifamily space, there's enough meat on that bone for you to bring in partners, multiple partners if you want. So one of our key partners was actually a construction guy, and he has experience building large apartment complexes, and he was a general contractor for 30 years before then, now builds these big places. So for him, it was a cakewalk. Oh, he walked by, he looked at the property, snapped his finger, said, yeah, this will go here, this will go here, this is how we'll do this, and immediately could plug our team in years of building experience and rehab experience. So I love that. Without that team mentality, I wouldn't have been able to do it. But we were able to buy that property. Good amount of hiccups along the road. Our manager was stealing from us for quite a bit of time. We could talk about that too. But big learning curve. A big learning experience, and something I wouldn't have been able to do on my own, especially if it was a single family thing. I would have needed to bring on more partners.
Yeah, Justin, you talk about the team aspect of kind of the larger commercial deals, the syndication deals here. This one, a 40 unit. What market was this one in?
Yeah, this is in St. Louis County.
Okay, so St. Louis County for this deal here, 40 units.
Yeah.
And you talked about the team aspect and having that contractor who had developed apartment buildings. So this person's clearly had an expertise and knew what they were doing when it came to the construction side of things. But obviously some learning curves. You mentioned kind of that manager who was stealing some money and the different
Yeah.
issues you came into there. Talk to us about the team itself, right? How did you come across this deal? Who were some of the key members you had to put on this team or that comprised of this team in order for you to see success?
Yeah. So really there were two key partners on us. So one was, of course, the construction knowledge base. And another was boots on the ground management. So I don't live in St. Louis. I live in Kansas City now, but at the time I was living in Arizona. This was a couple of years back. And the way that I found the deal, I was sourcing deals really through like LoopNet and Crexy, the way that other people, get started. And I had probably underwritten 200-300 deals at this point before I saw this deal. And I thought, it was almost weird. Like all the numbers looked good. I was like, what's wrong with this thing? At that point you're underwriting so many deals and you're kind of throwing them all out that, I ended up flying out and touring the property, meeting the broker, meeting a couple other contractors out here, bringing on the property manager who ended up actually stealing from us to come tour the property with us. And I decided this is a really good deal. I think that we're going to do it. And at the time I was in a formal mentorship group as well, one that I had paid for. And so I reached out to my coach and I had said, hey, I have this deal. It's looking really good. I've flown out. I've checked it out. what do you think? I think this looks like a really good opportunity. And he kind of said the same things I did. He said, well, it's very risky for you to take on a deal like this when you don't live in the area and you don't have a construction background. So maybe I wouldn't do it. Now, the timing was actually perfect because I think the couple of days after that, we had an in-person conference out in Texas. And I flew out to the conference. Again, I was kind of talking about this deal to a few people, and who ended up actually being one of the partners on the deal. We didn't even talk about real estate. We didn't even talk about the deal. We kind of talked about other stuff, right? I mean, he has a bunch of kids and I don't. We kind of talked about the dynamics of that. And after the conference, I had called him and I said, hey, I remember you have a construction background. I want you to look at something with me. I think there's something here, but I need another set of eyes. And he looked at it, kind of confirmed everything we did, and we jumped in and we said, sure, we'll do it. I think at some point, you just need kind of that validation that somebody else also says yes with you, and you're like, yes, okay, I knew that there was something here, and you're willing to do it. So we met through a program at a conference, and ever since then, we've been taking down deals.
I love it, man. And congratulations on that deal. Do you guys still own that, or did you sell that one?
We do, yeah. We still own that. So that was quite a few years ago, and now we are looking at options of selling it. We're looking at some sale options or some refinance options. The stars might align where we sell it. There's a couple of unique situations with some other complexes in the area that are selling really, really well. So we might hop on that train. So not too
Okay.
sure yet.
Okay. I think it's really interesting, right? And because in one space here, you find this deal, and this
Mhm.
is on Crexy or on LoopNet, right? So it's marketed, it's on the open market. Savvy investors have had a chance to take a look at this, and they've all either passed or did not, offer enough for that seller to sell. You
Yeah,
come across this deal, you take it to your mentor. Your coach looks at this and says, "Hey, the numbers look good, but this is a risky deal for you. It's your first deal. You need it's heavy
yeah,
construction, right? It's pretty much fully vacant, heavy
yeah,
construction deal, lots of risk. I would pass." You meet this other guy a couple days later. He looks at it and says, "Hey, let's do it."
yeah,
I think it's interesting because you got conflicting feedback on this
mhm,
deal.
yeah,
And I want to hear how you weighed that, because as investors, I think real estate investors are eternally optimistic people, right?
yeah,
We want to see the good that can happen.
yeah,
And you kind of need that, that devil on your shoulder, whatever you call it, but you need that voice of reason to help you see the challenges and help you recognize at least the risk. Talk to us about kind of that decision making process where you found the deal, you see the numbers, you got the feedback from your coach that you should actually pass. You find this other person who says, "Hey, I'll go in with you." Talk to us about kind of that decision making process for you.
yeah. Yeah. So, one thing is I actually circled back to my coach and said, hey, I have this partner. Here's his experience. What do you think now? And I got another confirmation that said, hey, yeah, okay. If you have a partner that matches that experience with you, then yes, now you could do it. But to do it yourself would be a big, big task. One thing I love what you said, internally optimistic is we knew it being our first, we didn't syndicate it. We just did it ourselves with the JV because it was our first one. We really didn't feel comfortable taking money from investors. Um, the price point of the deal was really low. It was about $1 million. And when you're talking about 40 units in multifamily, okay, $1 million, you can snap your fingers and $1 million is gone. So we knew that given that lower price point, we also had a little bit of room to make some mistakes. And we both determined at the end of the day, when we first got in the deal, we said, this is our first deal. I don't care if we break even at the end of it, that's fine because it's not a lot of money and it's an enormously great learning experience. None of us had done a syndication before. And it proved to be an incredible learning experience. Now the returns have been fantastic on it, but we had made that decision at the beginning. Hey, this is our first deal. We're not expecting to slam dunk home run this thing and knock it out and 2x our money in a year right off the bat. We understand that this gives us a lower point of entry where we feel that there's a mitigation of risk there. If it was a $5-10 million building, okay, you got a little bit more risk in your downside. So we felt that point of entry was really good for us as well. So we did weigh the risk rewards of it, and we determined everybody involved was comfortable saying, even if we break even by the end of this, we're going to be okay because the value of the transaction and the knowledge is really what we were after.
Yeah, I think that's really good to know. I mean, you're basically got to sort of like 25 a door, right? 25K a
Yeah.
door. So really low entry point. I'm not sure what your comp showed and how much you put into it, but the bottom line is you felt that, hey, with the amount of risk that you had, you felt comfortable with the team you built. And I think that's really important. And I'm glad you clarified the point that you went back to your coach and said, hey, I've got this partner on board. Here's this partner's experience. Now, what's your feedback? And the
Yeah,
takeaway and the insight there is you want to mitigate the risk as much as you possible. It's not so much about the deal being a heavy lift deal and it was your first deal. Certainly that's risky for you, but that just means you need to go find partners who have that experience. Don't go out there and try to do it all by yourself. It's just a lot of risk. It's unnecessary risk. Find
mhm,
people and surround yourself with team members who have that experience, who can help lead aspects of the deal that maybe you can't do. So I'm glad you went through that. And that's really helpful for all of our listeners just to understand and wrap your head around why it's so important to build a team, why this is a team sport, and why it really is important to network and build these relationships. So that if you come across a deal that maybe you can't do based on your own experience by yourself, if you can align with the right people, you can go ahead and move forward with that deal. Talk to me
exactly.
about the business, right? So that 40 unit, you get going, it's more of a JV deal. You move forward and start doing other deals with investors. What are you up to right now?
Yeah, so our latest acquisition was 144 units out. And so I live in Kansas City. This property is out in Topeka. We closed on that last year. And since then, we still underwrite deals. We still look for properties. I think us, like a lot of people, we're not seeing too much that really is exciting us right now, at least to stay by kind of our underwriting standards. And so, we have pivoted now. We're actually raising money for a short-term rental fund because I think, getting creative and what you do and the types of assets you do is going to be big over these next few years. But yeah, we're continuing to look at multifamily right now for this year. The short-term rental fund will probably take up most of our time. But I think in the next 1 or 2 years, there's a lot of data about distress loans coming due, a lot of distressed sales, more so than were happening in the couple of years past. So we're keeping our fingers on the pulse of the market, but we're haven't been buying as much as we have in years past. The past couple of years have been absolutely crazy. I mean, people have been paying top dollar for a lot of assets that wasn't really our style. So, we're diversifying a little bit with the short-term rentals, but we're still keeping our eye on multifamily and underwriting as much as we can.
Justin, talk to me about your podcast.
Yeah, so I have a podcast called Passive Real Estate Strategies, and really the goal is all things about the truly passive stuff, syndications, funds, REITs, passive investors experiences. One thing that I really breaks my heart to see is people say, oh, real estate, it's passive investing. They go out, they buy a property, they say, oh, the manager will do everything. The manager takes up a ton of their return and also still kind of requires their time and energy to run this thing. And that's something that I hate to see happen to people. So if you want to make real estate a passive investment, I always say owning real estate is not passive, but investing in real estate is. So it's really to help educate people on the passive strategies, the ins and outs of all of these ways that you can really just send money and not have to be requirement of your time, energy, or focus.
Justin, what you just said may have went over some people's heads. So I want you to say it again. You said
Yeah.
owning real estate is not passive, but investing in real estate is passive. Clarify that.
Yeah. So, if you're gonna buy a property by yourself and you're gonna own this property, you know, the big angle that's sold to a lot of people is, yeah, you buy the property, man, a property manager will take care of it. They'll send you checks every month. That could happen. That might happen. It typically doesn't. You'll keep in a situation like us where our manager was just really stealing from us. You really have to keep your finger on top of that. Or I mean, your yields are so sucked out of that it's hard to make it worth it. It's hard to justify the risk to go after these things. And then you find out you're not truly passive because even though owning property is more passive than having another full-time job, at the end of the day, mental capacity is something that you really want to protect and cherish. If you're a high performing professional in your field and you love what you do, if you're a salesperson and you love to sell, okay, you don't want to sell all day, then come home and have to deal with a couple hours of maintenance requests or a couple hours, hey, my manager needs this, I got to approve these things. There's still work that goes into it. So if you want to take that completely off your plate, you have to look at a passive strategy so you can really, really, really take that passive position.
Yeah, and I think one way to think about that is there's passive income and then there's a part-time job.
Yeah.
And when you talk about owning real estate, I mean, it's not the ownership part that is the job, but at the end of the day, when you are the owner, you're accountable, you're responsible.
Yeah.
And that property manager can do some things, but you still have to manage the manager. I mean, at the end of the day, you're the owner, which means you're the CEO. You're the person calling the shots, making the decisions. And I think that was the hard lesson we learned early on. And we were always actively managing our portfolio. But the first time we did a commercial deal, it was only 8 units, but we hired a property management company, and I genuinely thought it would be truly passive. They would do
Yeah.
all the work, and I would just get my checks every month. Well,
Yep.
first month went by, no check. What's going on? Start
Yeah.
digging into the numbers. And I'm like, oh, how come we didn't make more money? Oh, well, this guy didn't pay, and this person didn't pay, and this didn't come through. We had this repair. So now I'm digging into the numbers and I'm giving feedback, and I'm saying, well, did we do this or did we check that? And you realize that, for me at least, and I think this is true for most people, you are still running a business. And if you give away the reins to a property manager to run your business, you're making a big mistake,
Yeah.
because they are not going to run that business the way you are going to run that business. And it's not to say that they can't handle the daily tasks that come up. It's just they're not going to be thinking about all the little things.
Yeah.
And it's important, if they, for instance, say you have a vacant unit, they're going to put it for rent. I'm sure they're going to show it and they're going to put it up there, but are they looking at the wording and the verbiage to make sure they put in those keywords that hook someone to come
Yeah.
schedule a showing? Are they analyzing why they only had 2 people reach out this week? Are they realizing where they're at in the marketplace? Are they looking at it to say, hey, it's been 10 days on market and we're not getting the kind of traction we thought we should get? Are they looking at where it is in the month and realizing that most people are gonna, make a decision around the middle of the month for that upcoming month?
Yep.
Because again, the tenants you want, the residents you want, they don't move in 3 days before,
Yeah.
right? Those
Exactly.
people are not trying to have that kind of stress in their life. So I'm not waiting until the 27th to figure out where I'm going to be living on the 1st, right? I'm not going to wait 4 days before I'm going to get kicked out of my apartment to find a place. I'm looking for the next month. So
Yeah.
those are like they're little things, but they're huge things, right? So like if you miss the 18th, 19th, 20th, if you don't get at least by that date, you can pretty much wash the next month, right?
Yeah.
If you get a
Yep.
resident, it's not going to be an ideal resident. It's going to be someone else in a distressed situation who they've got to move immediately. And then that's the circumstances that create that stress are going to be coming into your
Yeah.
place, right? So
Yeah.
these are all it may sound like nuanced and little microaggressions or whatever, but this is the kind of thing that
Mhm.
you have to understand, and you have to have the people, the boots on the ground, that recognize this and are looking for this and have a sense of urgency, versus someone just clocking, punching the clock and doing her job. And the
Yeah. And
reality is, when you hire a property management company, most of those people, they're employees. Just like other people don't really love their job, they don't love their job. They're coming in, they're doing their
yeah.
job. When 5 o'clock rolls around, they're clocking out and they gone. So they're not
Yeah.
thinking about your business every single minute of every single day. Maybe if you have a larger property, they are, but as an owner, you have to understand, you have to stay involved. You cannot
Mhm.
be passive if you own the property, but there
Yep.
are passive investing strategies where you can back up and you can let someone run it. And that's what you're getting at. Justin, just you can chime in on what I just said, but then also
Yeah.
talk to us about some of those passive investing strategies for investors.
Yeah. So, and then one thing to that too is we had a property, and a lot of times the manager, they're looking to get through the day, right? They're not really
Right,
looking at
right.
it from 1,000 foot view, or they're not looking at, hey, what's the value going to be when I sell this on a T12 financial basis in, a couple months. We had this property and we're going through the financials, and I was looking, I said, hey, it's really weird. Electricity had tripled one
Hmm.
month over any, and it wasn't seasonal, there was no trend in it, there was no reason it should have tripled in a month. And I said, hey, just so you know, electricity tripled, what happened? And they go, oh, I don't know, let me go check. And in this apartment complex, they had left, I think it was like a dozen or 12 or 14 units, did not, the fan was just set for on the thermostat. So it was, I think it was wintertime, and it was set to heat, and they were empty, and there was like a window open, so the heaters were literally running 24 hours a day on like 14 units. Okay, well, now you're going to pay triple. A manager will never just catch that, they don't look at that stuff. That's not what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, you can't let your foot off the gas. And if we let that continue, that really puts a dent in our valuation on the property going down the road. So yeah, I love that. So passive real estate strategies, you're really looking at something where your expectation is only your equity, your cash investment. Now you can look at syndications and funds. You also have private REITs. You have public REITs as well, but you're essentially more investing in the stock market at that point than in actual real estate. And all have their pros and cons. And all what I really love about them serve a different purpose. I mean, if you're out there and you're listening and you've got a lot of money to play with, okay, you're probably going to go to a fund or a syndication. If you've only got a little bit of cash, you just want to get in the game, man, some REITs are available for just a couple $100. Sometimes I'll see an ad that's like $40 minimum. Like they have these small micro investments that you can do, but just learn those strategies, see what works best for you, and get in the game. I mean, you got to get in the game of real estate. Real estate all around you, it's going up and up and up, and people are saying, "Well, I can't afford to buy houses anymore." Yeah, but you can afford to invest in property, and that's how you start to multiply your money. So I would look for those REITs, real estate investment trusts, syndications, or funds. Research those, pop over my podcast. I have breakdowns of all of them, and really think about which one matches your personal abilities now and your comfortability, and get moving on it. Don't wait to buy real estate. You should buy real estate and wait.
Love it, Justin. You mentioned that, you had that property manager who was stealing from you. Looking
Yeah.
back, one, how did you find out, that this person was stealing from you? And what would you do differently, or what can you change in your process to make sure this doesn't happen for other investors moving forward?
Yeah. So, we kind of had our ears up almost the whole time we worked with them. And part of it was just our ignorance. We thought, okay, this might just be the multifamily space. We don't know this neighborhood. It wasn't, a class A property in a class A neighborhood, right? So not like you have every manager in the world who's batting down your doors to come manage an empty building for you, right? When it's empty, they're really not making much money. So you got all the work ahead of you. And one thing was the manager was also the contractor. So it was financials would get a little bit muddy because, okay, where are the draws going? Okay, what was the actual income of the property versus what was CapEx versus what was actual maintenance? And they had total control over all of that. And anytime we asked different questions, we always got a different answer from everybody on the team. Numbers really just didn't start to add up. Appliances were going missing. I mean, it was just, but the appliances went missing. Oh, the cameras were not working that day. And so we kind of always had our suspicions, but really it became, when can we fire this person? Because in that heavy construction process, it's hard to just remove your entire staff. Because again, you open up your opportunity for them to just say, okay, well, we'll just take everything with us. You have to have, or they had our cash too. So they had different draws, or they had more cash. We would have to say, okay, we'll let them finish this part of the project and then we'll move on to something else. We'll fire them then. And really one thing that you should be aware of to prevent those things is, I would constantly be interviewed. If you feel like that's happening to you, your property, you've got to constantly, with very, very urgent matters, like look for other managers. We were looking for other managers, but just given the state of the property, we couldn't really get anybody who was, in our opinion, better to manage it. We were calling every single manager there was. So when you take on something like that, if you're going to hire that manager, be more hands-on with them. And even we would show up every week at the property and check things out. But when they have total control over your finances, it's hard to keep them organized. It's hard to keep everything organized. So do your own accounting, show up on the property unannounced, knock on doors, ask tenants, hey, do you have work orders? Like has management been responsive to you? We found out later that a lot of those answers were no, they haven't been responsive. We've put in these work orders and they've ignored them all the time. Here's my list. I've sent these emails. They never attended to them. So go to the property, ask your tenants, how is management doing? Are they treating you guys well? And that would alert you to a lot of issues that they could see as well. And then just ask questions. A lot of times when you have these financials, if you're asking them questions about line items in them, they're going to know, okay, they're really checking their financials and they're going to be a little bit more on top of it.
Do you think it was a mistake, at least in this instance, to have that property manager also be the construction manager and having kind of full reign over the entire budget of the project?
Yeah, that was our first experience. So my answer is yes. That's our first and only experience. I'm sure it's great to be streamlined that way, but I think there needs to be a little bit more trust. yeah, I think, in the beginning we gave too much trust too quickly because again, we were kind of under the impression, hey, we'll buy this thing. The manager takes care of everything. They'll handle all of this. We just gave too much trust too quickly and kind of jumped in with both feet. And we should have just given a little bit at a time, and then have that trust be earned instead of, like you said, optimistic about everything, that everything's going to go well. We should have been much more cautious of that.
Yeah, I think it's a great point because, I think a lot of times we talk about building a team, and the reality is you don't know you have a good team
Mhm.
until you're in the throes of it, right? Everyone has a good resume, everyone has done some things here and there, but until you see how someone reacts when the pressure's on, it's kind of tough to know if you really got the right people. And unfortunately, when you don't have those checks and balances, it's even harder because now this person, they can move things around, they can maybe be
Yeah.
ahead of you a little bit, and it's a challenge. So I would say definitely you want to create those checks and balances,
Yeah.
and maybe you manage that draw process where you're making sure the work is done, you're making sure that everything is there, they're signing off on those lien waivers, and all that's taking place before you write those checks and you
Yeah.
pay kind of your contractors. And on the property management side, to your point, I think you just have to stay on top of them. You have to take a look at the numbers. You want to talk to residents, which I think is a great idea. At the end of the day, the residents are your customers, and you want to make sure that those customers are happy, that they enjoy living at the property, that they're being taken care of, that they're being attended to. And if that's not happening, you want to find that out sooner rather than later. So really good insights. And sometimes we learn more from the challenges than our successes. So I think it's great to kind of learn from that experience.
Yep.
Justin, for folks who want to learn more about you and your business, what is the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah, so we have an ebook if you're interested in passive investing. It's called The Definitive Guide to Passive Real Estate Strategies. Check that out, thedefinitive.guidebook.com. Once you sign up for that, I'll send you an email, a personal email from me. I actually shoot you a video, just introducing myself, and you'll have all my info at the bottom as well, so you can always reach out.
Give me a failure or an apparent failure that sets you up for later success.
Yeah. Oh man, I think that 41 unit. I don't think it was a failure because we still made good money. We could have made a lot more if we kind of were on top of that team, but it set us up for huge success because once you get burned on that first time, you put in the checks and balances for it. And we didn't have any investors' money at the time, so we were able to fix the way we operate before we ever touch a dime of our investors' cash.
Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for your business.
Yeah, a digital resource. I am married to an app called Asana. So it's a task management system. I live my personal life, my professional life, everything's on Asana. And it's just the way that I keep my life organized, what needs to be done on what days, different projects or goals that we're working on, tracking progress and goals. I'm a big lists guy. So if you like to have lists, you like to cross things off your list, Asana is a great tool that I use.
Give me the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
Yeah, it's going to be the book Limitless by Jim Quick. So it's really about brain training and bettering yourself as a human being, being able to pay attention, laser focus on things, be more productive, learn things quicker, speed read, and just little tricks like that that have really helped me optimize different parts of my life. And no exaggeration, probably cut my work days in half just by some of the tricks I learned there. So Limitless by Jim Quick, best book that I've read.
Give me a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals.
Yeah, so I am really big into, so there's a book called that I just finished actually called The Miracle Equation, written by the same author as The Miracle Morning. And I've really started to use a lot of affirmations and a lot of meditation. Life gets extraordinarily hectic. And when I started meditating, I was able to really focus in a lot more on task at hand. It helped me with my sleep a lot, and the affirmations really helped me gain a lot of confidence in a lot of the things that I do. So affirmations and meditations and following a lot of the advice from the Miracle Equation and the Miracle Morning books.
Give me your number one insight for multifamily investing.
Yeah, one of the best ways to do it is you've got to get in the game. Analysis paralysis is a very real thing. We've met people, I'm sure you've the same, where I'll go to a conference one year, meet great people. Next year, I'll meet the same great people and kind of nothing's really happened. Next year, I'll meet the same great people. Next year, I'll see the same great people. You can totally get stuck in that space. Like, well, I'm just not ready yet. And I'm not saying don't be prepared, but you're never going to wake up and, man, days is the day. Like, I'm 100% ready. You got to get in the game. Take small steps every single day towards your goals, but just know that you're probably never going to feel completely ready, but it's time to get going.
I love it, man. Listen, let's lighten the mood. You were out there in KC area. Give me your favorite place to grab a bite to eat.
Oh man, my favorite place right now, I go through phases of my life. Right now, I'm in a chicken wing phase. There's this bar a little bit by my place called the Peanut. Everything there is horrible except for their wings. Beer's bad. All the other food is terrible. Never get anything else there, but their wings are they're world class. They're good.
You might be the first person who has ever called out a restaurant to say all the food is
Oh,
horrible except for this one dish.
all of it's
And
horrible.
that's my favorite place to go because I only eat this one dish. So that's amazing. So we will definitely keep that in mind. If you go to the Peanut, only get the wings, don't get the rest of it because
Yeah,
Justin will tell you, I didn't tell you to get anything else. So don't even
or
get a menu, just get the
I won't
wings.
eat it.
And there you go. Justin, I want to thank you for being a great guest, man. Talking about kind of your journey coming from, an intern, a single family broker, getting into commercial real estate, doing that 40, 41 unit deal, and then being able to scale the portfolio from there, working on your short-term real estate or short-term rental fund now and
Yeah,
continue to grow the portfolio. Again, for anybody who wants to learn more about what you all are working on, they can check out that ebook. The definitiveguidebook.com is where you go to get that. It's all about passive real estate investing strategies. Justin, I just want to thank you again for being a great guest. Thanks for coming on Multifamily Insights, and we look forward to staying in touch.
thanks so much, John.